The other story I want to tell is the result of that are stereotypes and myths. I call them super myths, the 5 super myths that define our thinking about the Arab world. And I go through the literature of what is available to review what they are and to debunk them. But I debunk them, and I hope successfully, in a way that's not been done before. Instead of what I call bad science is the books that get written based on anecdote. You know, I met this guy and he's like this, all Arabs are like that. Or I'm sitting in the bar with this guy and he told me that, all Arabs think that way. The kind of, I call it bad science because it's sort of like, you know, all blacks run faster, or all Jews are this, or all Hispanics are that, all Arabs are this. Raphael Patai writes a book that is used by the US military till this day. In Iraq, it was a standard textbook on Arab culture and Arab thinking. That's the one that taught us that they only understand force, or that they only understand humiliation, or it in many ways led to Abu Ghraib, that sense of Arab psychology being driven by their kind of their oversexed and sense of humiliation and shame, and how you had to use force to kind of whip it out of them and all of that. And that sense of creating a generalized sense of the Arab is one of the myths we live with, is that they're all the same. And I therefore wanted to take that on. What I did was not present little stories of my own, although I do present some stories, but I present hard data. I poll. I love polling, not just because my brother's in the business. I love polling because it opens a window and it lets voices in. When you ask 4,000 Arabs across the Middle East, what's the best thing you can think of when the word America is said? And you get open-ended answers, and then you group them and you pay attention to them, and you sort of sift through them. They all are speaking to you and saying to you something that you then begin to sort out of the cacophony of all the different responses. Images and impressions begin to come through that help you understand what they're thinking. When you ask them what's the best thing about your country, and they talk to you about its beautiful mountains or its tourism or its safety, or they wax defensive and they tell you about that we're not this or we're not that, you begin to develop an impression of what Moroccans think about Morocco, or Egyptians about Egypt, or Lebanese about their country, or even as you then group them within the country between religious groupings or genders or age groupings, you begin to see an enormous portrait of diversity emerge, where because of the unique climates or the unique social cultures or the unique sort of individual groupings that exist in these countries, Berbers in North Africa or Christian communities in Lebanon, or you begin to see a texture of life that is in fact diverse. Young people caught up in globalization, wanting change. Women beginning to emerge as a force of their own, beginning to speak about their rights within their different countries. And so they'll say to you, ask the question, are rights guaranteed for all in your country? And should rights be guaranteed for all in your country, for women or for all people in your country? You get different answers from different genders. You get different answers from different age groupings. And you begin to see change emerging, and you begin to see a portrait of a people that cannot be so simply stereotyped or categorized as all of one mind on anything. The second myth we have is the myth that was captured in a special issue of The Economist last year on the Arab world, which, despite the fact that it was called the Arab world, said there's no such thing as an Arab world. They're so different and so diverse that there's no unity at all here. It's not even a place at all, is how they concluded. And I wasn't quite sure that was the case, because when we poll, we find that people self-identify as Arab, significant numbers. When we poll, we find that we ask them, how important is your Arab identity? In the 90% range, they say, it's very important to me. When we ask further, why is it important to you? What does it mean to you? They begin to identify political concerns as defining their common sense of being a political community, not homogeneous in culture in so many ways, not homogeneous as to be stereotyped as one thing, but rather a group of people sharing a common set of concerns that need to be understood. And among them, the issue of Palestine is critical. The fate of the Iraqi people is critical. Issues like what happened in Abu Ghraib resonated across that entire region, and you make a big mistake if you ignore the fact that Palestine is important in Iraq, in Morocco, or if you think that people in the UAE don't care about what happened in Abu Ghraib, because they do, because it's happening to people like them. The third myth is that they're all angry and they hate us. They hate our values. They hate our way of life. We actually did a poll recently and asked Americans the question, why do Arabs have a bad impression of America? And the number one choice was they hate our values and our way of life. Actually, they don't. I remember when we first polled on that question, Gallup had just come out with a poll. And in their poll, they found that Arabs had a bad impression of America. And so the conventional wisdom was they hate us. They hate our values. They hate everything about us. And I was on a couple of shows debating people on that issue. But I decided that I had to test it myself. So we polled. And we polled by asking people to tell us about America. Where did you learn about America? What do you know about America? And do you like not just America, but do you like American people? Do you like American culture? What do you think about American science and technology? Do you appreciate America's freedom and democracy that it offers its own people? We asked a range of questions, and we also asked, what do you think about American policy toward Palestine? What do you think about American policy toward Iraq? What we found were that numbers for supporting the American people or liking the American people were high. Our way of life, higher. Our values, high. Our science and technology, our education, our culture, high. Our policy, very low. In polling, you call that a drag. The attitude toward our policy drags down the overall number. So if you ask the question, as Gallup did, what is your attitude toward America? You get a bad number. That doesn't mean they don't like us. It means that they don't like our policy, but they like all these other things about it. I said at the time, I said it's sort of like a woman who just kicked her husband out for being a serial cheater, asking her, what do you think of men? She's going to give you a off-the-cuff answer, I'm angry at them. But if you say, what do you think about fathers? And what do you think about brothers? And what do you think about sons? And what do you think about, you get a different answer. So it's looking at the complexity of the picture that gives you a real answer. I wrote an article after that poll called, It's the Policy Stupid. It's not our values they don't like. In fact, they like our values. They don't think we apply our values to them. And when they looked at Abu Ghraib, which we thought would blow over after we sent a couple of sergeants off to jail, they are still waiting to understand, how does the country that celebrates democracy, that celebrates freedom, how did we do that? And why did we do it? And why did we not understand the impact it would have on that broad region?